Welcome to Richard Branson's Soaring to Success, a tale of determination and innovation. You'll explore how Branson defies conventional wisdom, building a business empire from scratch. As we journey through bustling city streets to serene tropical islands, witness themes of perseverance and risk-taking come alive. Throughout, complex vocabulary and notable grammar choices are briefly explained in line, ensuring your understanding is seamless. This story promises to inspire aspiring entrepreneurs and business enthusiasts with its engaging and optimistic tone. So, settle in, and let's discover how Branson transformed challenges into triumphs, leading Virgin to unprecedented heights. Richard stood in his modest London office, the city's ceaseless hum seeping through the slightly ajar window. He tapped his fingers on the desk, glancing at the skyline that seemed to stretch indefinitely. His eyes, though bright with ambition, carried the weight of his prodigious, meaning enormous, vision for Virgin. The room smelled faintly of leather and coffee, a comforting but urgent reminder of the stakes. Joan sat opposite him, her eyes attentive, her demeanor pensive, meaning thoughtful. She listened as Richard spoke, his charismatic tone weaving dreams of expansion and innovation. Yet beneath her composed exterior, a flicker of anxiety flared. She had always supported Richard, but the risks, they were real, daunting even. Her voice, reassuring as ever, sought to anchor his soaring aspirations. "Richard, you know I believe in you," she said, her words laced with a subtle edge of worry. "But are you sure about this pace?" Richard paused, the city buzz a distant echo. His fear of public failure, unspoken yet palpable, lurked in the shadows of his mind. "I know, Joan," he replied, his voice firm but betraying a hint of vulnerability. "But if we don't push forward, we'll never know what we could achieve." Their conversation shifted, the office atmosphere thickening with determination. Joan's support mingled with her unease, an internal conflict mirrored in her concerned gaze. As Richard continued to outline his plans, his confidence seemed to oscillate, charisma on the outside, self-doubt lurking within. A knock interrupted them, and Simon Draper entered, bringing a breath of pragmatism into the room. His analytical voice carried the weight of caution. "Richard, we need to talk about the expansion," Simon began, his words deliberate. "It's moving fast, perhaps too fast. A more measured approach might be wise." Richard listened intently, but his optimism remained unshaken. The room felt charged with contrasting energies, Richard's infectious ambition and Simon's sagacious, meaning wise, advice. "Had we not taken risks in the past, where would we be now?" Richard countered, inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject plus past participle. Despite Simon's reservations, Richard's resolve was unyielding. He envisioned a future where Virgin Records stood as a testament to their perseverance. His determination, a palpable force, filled the room, echoing with the theme of defying adversity. "If we were to hesitate now," Richard mused, his thoughts drifting to hypothetical scenarios, "we might miss our greatest opportunity." Subjunctive mood expresses hypothetical scenarios. Joan and Simon exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of understanding and concern. As the meeting drew to a close, Richard moved towards the window, his gaze settling on the sprawling city below. London's bustling streets, bathed in the afternoon light, seemed to whisper promises of untapped potential. The view rekindled his resolve, a reminder that skepticism was merely another challenge to overcome with innovation and leadership. In that moment, the noise from the city faded, leaving only Richard's heartbeat, steady, resolute, as he vowed to transform the echo of doubt into the rhythm of success. The bustling streets of London teemed with energy, as if the city itself were aware of the momentous occasion. Richard stood amidst the throng, a mix of asterisk exhilaration, meaning excitement, and anxiety coursing through him. Virgin Records was making its debut, and while the success was moderate, it was a beginning. The sound of clinking glasses mingled with muffled conversations at the launch event, creating a symphony that mirrored his internal state, a blend of hope and trepidation. Richard moved through the crowd, exchanging warm smiles and firm handshakes, yet beneath his confident exterior, a whisper of self-doubt lingered. It was the kind of doubt that gnawed at him during quiet moments, reminding him of the immense risks he had taken. Despite this, his confidence swelled, buoyed by the night's successes. The rhythmic hum of a train, distant yet distinct, punctuated the evening air, a symbol of progress that fed his ambition. Back home, Joan watched Richard with a reassuring smile, yet her eyes offered a glimpse of her unspoken worries. She had always been his steadfast supporter, but the mounting risks made her anxious. "You were brilliant tonight," she said, her voice a gentle anchor to his buoyant spirit. "Thank you," Richard replied, his tone informal yet sincere. Love and tension danced between them, an intricate waltz of support and concern. Joan understood the stakes, and while she admired his unyielding, meaning steadfast, determination, she could not shake the fear of potential failure. As the initial euphoria, meaning joy of the launch, began to wane, Richard found himself ensnared by unforeseen financial pressures. The harsh crunch of numbers echoed ominously in his office, challenging his innovative spirit. He sat at his desk, surrounded by ledgers and receipts, his mind a battlefield of ideas and obstacles. Richard's creativity was tested like never before. He sought unconventional solutions, refusing to capitulate to the looming threats. His determination was like the unyielding tide, relentless and unwavering, as he conjured ways to navigate the financial labyrinth. Later, Richard met with Simon Draper, his business partner, to discuss Virgin's future. Simon's cautious tone contrasted sharply with Richard's enthusiasm, an audible reminder of their differing philosophies. "Not only did we gain some traction tonight," Richard began, embodying a conviction that bordered on defiance, "but we also proved we can carve out a niche." "Indeed," Simon replied, his analytical mind weighing each word carefully. "Though we must tread carefully. Expansion is fraught with dangers." Had we decided, inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject plus past participle, to wait, none of this would have happened, Richard countered, his voice imbued with the fervor of someone who sees a path others cannot yet discern. Simon nodded, understanding the passion that fueled Richard's drive. Yet he couldn't help but feel discontent with the slow progress. The future of Virgin was a topic of constant debate between them, a balancing act of ambition and caution. As the evening drew to a close, Richard sat alone, staring out at the city that had become his playground and battleground. Possibilities stretched before him, limitless yet daunting. The night was still, save for the distant sounds of the city, a reminder that while the world slept, opportunities waited for those willing to seize them. Richard took a deep breath, his mind a whirlwind of strategies and dreams. There, beneath the sprawling London skyline, he resolved to push forward, his spirit as unyielding as ever. He knew the road would be fraught with challenges, but he also knew that with risk came the potential for great rewards. A subtle determination settled within him, one that promised more than mere survival. It promised triumph. The night seemed to whisper back, as if conspiring with him. The journey was far from over, and with each passing moment new chapters awaited to be written. Richard stood on a bustling London street, the cacophony, meaning a harsh mixture of sounds, of city life swirling around him. The hum of traffic mingled with the voices of hurried pedestrians, creating a symphony of urban existence. Each sound, each moment painted a vivid picture of opportunity and ambition. It was here, amidst the vibrant chaos, that the idea of launching Virgin Atlantic took root in his mind. The energy of the city filled him with a determination as palpable as the cool breeze skimming his skin. Inside a quiet meeting room, the atmosphere was starkly different. Simon Draper, his longtime business partner, sat opposite Richard, his expression a blend of concern and calculation. "Richard," Simon began, his voice measured, "I understand your enthusiasm, but we must tread carefully. Virgin's rapid expansion, while exciting, poses risks of financial instability." Richard nodded, appreciating Simon's cautious nature. Simon had always been the analytical voice in their partnership, balancing Richard's more impulsive tendencies. "You know I thrive on taking risks," Richard replied, his tone a mix of charisma and reassurance. "It's what brought us here, isn't it?" Simon leaned back, his brow furrowed. "Indeed, yet we must ensure our foundation is solid. The airline industry is unforgiving. One misstep and—" He let the sentence hang, the weight of unspoken possibilities heavy in the air. As the conversation lingered in Richard's mind, he later found himself alone, enveloped by the contemplative silence, meaning expressing deep thought of his office. The ticking of the wall clock punctuated his thoughts, each tick a reminder of time slipping by, of choices needing firm decisions. Reflecting on past innovations, a familiar trepidation, meaning a feeling of fear or agitation, crept in. Public skepticism was not new to him, yet the possibility of failure loomed like an ever-present shadow. Later, at home, Joan noticed the furrowed brow and distant gaze of her husband. She approached him, her presence a calming balm. "Richard, what's going on in that head of yours?" she asked gently, her voice grounded and reassuring. He sighed, the weight of his thoughts evident. "It's this airline idea, Joan. The risks are enormous." Joan nodded, understanding the duality of her role, supportive yet always anxious about the depth of his ventures. "You know it's what you're meant to do," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Trust your instincts. You've always known how to turn visions into reality." Her words offered solace, but the specter of risk lingered. Quiet moments passed, filled with the rustle of paper as Richard sifted through documents, contemplating the magnitude of entering the airline industry. The distant roar of engines outside seemed a foreboding echo of what lay ahead. As the evening deepened, Richard stood at the window, watching the sky darken with gathering clouds. The strengthening breeze whispered challenges yet to come. But within him, a resolve formed, unyielding and determined. The path ahead was fraught with obstacles, yet not even potential public failure could deter his spirit. Had he known the road would be smooth, inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject, plus past participle, perhaps the adventure would lose its allure. The uncertainty was, after all, the very essence of his journey. With newfound clarity, Richard prepared to meet the challenges head-on, his mind racing with ideas and strategies. He embraced the thrill of the unknown, ready to soar into the turbulent skies of the airline industry, where only the bold survived. Richard stood amidst the bustling London airport, surrounded by the cacophony, meaning loud noise, of travelers hurriedly making their way through terminals. The air was filled with announcements, the rolling of luggage wheels, and the occasional laughter echoing across the vast space. Despite the chaos, all Richard could think about was the weight of Virgin Atlantic's early struggles. The venture into the airline industry was proving more challenging than he had anticipated. In the dimly lit conference room, Richard sat across from Simon Draper, the table between them cluttered with daunting financial reports. As Simon went over the figures, Richard's brow furrowed. The numbers painted a stark picture of the financial hurdles they faced. Richard felt a growing trepidation, meaning fear, settle in his gut. Never had Richard felt such trepidation. Inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject plus past participle. Yet he listened intently, knowing that understanding these details was crucial for their survival. "These are not the figures we hoped for," Simon said, his tone cautious but not devoid of hope. "But innovation is never without risk." Richard nodded, absorbing the gravity of their situation. Despite the grim data, he remained resolute, meaning determined. He knew that to lead effectively, he must exude confidence, even if he didn't entirely feel it. If Richard were to succeed, he must remain resolute. Subjunctive mood, expressing a hypothetical situation. With a charismatic smile, Richard addressed his team, infusing his words with optimism. I know it looks tough now, but every great venture starts with challenges. Let's keep our eyes on the horizon. Later, as the pivotal flight prepared for departure, Richard stood outside, gazing at the sky. The weather was salubrious, meaning health-giving, almost too perfect, as if nature itself wished them success. The aircraft, a symbol of hope and new beginnings, stood ready on the runway. Watching the plane ascend, his heart pounded with anticipation. It was a visceral reminder of the risks he was taking, the bold moves that could either lead to triumph or disaster. But for Richard, risk was not merely a gamble. It was a necessary step toward innovation. That evening, in the quiet sanctuary of their home, Joan enveloped Richard in a reassuring embrace. Her presence was a balm to his spiraling thoughts. She sensed his inner turmoil without him having to say a word. "You did your best today," she whispered, her voice soothing. "And I believe in what you're building." Joan's calming words provided Richard with the fortitude, meaning strength, to face the impending challenges. He felt his resolve solidify, buoyed by her unwavering support. As they sat together, the world outside seemed to pause. Richard realized that while his ventures were fraught with uncertainty, his foundation was here, with Joan, with their shared dreams and mutual support. Richard resolved to persist, inspired by both the successful flight and Joan's unwavering support. With every challenge, he was reminded that perseverance was not a solitary endeavor. It was, instead, a journey he undertook with the strength drawn from those he cherished most. And, though the road ahead was uncertain, Richard knew he was not alone. His confidence renewed, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Unbeknownst to him, new opportunities and trials awaited, each with the potential to redefine the very essence of Virgin's ambitious journey. Richard stood in his bustling London office, the heart of the city pulsing around him. Outside, the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of pedestrians filtered through the slightly open windows. He was poring over a list of potential new industries for Virgin to embrace. His mind buzzed with the possibilities. The chance to diversify, meaning expand into various industries, was both exhilarating and daunting. Simon Draper entered the room with his usual air of caution. His steps were deliberate, the kind of pace that suggested he had already analyzed every possible outcome. "Richard," Simon began, his tone tinged with concern, "I know you're keen to expand, but at this pace, we might be courting disaster." The tense quiet in the room was punctuated by the faint ticking of a clock. Richard looked up, meeting Simon's gaze. "Disaster?" Richard echoed, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Or perhaps opportunity? We have to take the leap, Simon." "It's just," Simon hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "if everything doesn't align perfectly, we could face serious repercussions." His voice had the weight of someone who had seen too many ventures crumble under the weight of ambition. Richard nodded, understanding the conditional mood in Simon's argument. If anything went wrong, the consequences could be dire. Still, he felt that familiar stirring of rebellion against conventional wisdom. "We've always thrived by defying the odds," he replied, his voice firm with conviction. Yet, inside, Richard wrestled with his own self-doubt. Analysts had expressed skepticism, meaning doubt about the truth of something, over his relentless drive to expand Virgin's reach. They whispered of financial ruin, questioning the sanity behind his audacious plans. In need of clarity, Richard found himself transported to a serene tropical island, the complete antithesis to London's frenetic energy. The salubrious breeze, meaning health-giving, cooled his face as he walked along the deserted beach. Here, the noise of the city was a distant memory, replaced by the gentle lapping of waves. Joan joined him, her presence a calming balm to his turmoil. meaning a state of great disturbance. She took his hand, her voice soft yet unwavering. "Richard, it's okay to have doubts, but you've always known when to trust your instincts." He sighed, grateful for her grounding influence. "Sometimes I question if I'm pushing too far, too fast." Joan squeezed his hand, anchoring him to the present. "You wouldn't be you if you didn't push boundaries. Just remember, you have a whole team behind you." Richard nodded, the weight on his shoulders feeling a little lighter. He resolved to continue his ambitious expansion, despite the adversity. In his mind, the words resonated clearly. "Never had I thought." Inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject plus past participle. "We'd come this far, yet here we are." As they walked together, the sun dipping below the horizon, Richard felt a renewed sense of purpose. The doubts would linger, as they always did, but they were no match for the fire that burned within him, a fire that had driven him to defy the odds and build an empire out of sheer determination. And somewhere in the background, a new idea was already taking root, promising to lead him on yet another extraordinary journey. Richard sat in his London office, the view from the large windows offering a panorama of the city's unrelenting energy. The cacophony, meaning a harsh mixture of sounds, outside mirrored his racing thoughts. Cars honked, people shouted, and the wind carried distant echoes of life being lived at full tilt. Yet, inside, it was quieter, the hum of the city muted by the glass. He leaned back in his chair, a wave of asterisk melancholy, meaning deep sadness, washing over him. The memory of past risks, the dizzying highs and perilous lows, consumed him. Each venture had been a battle against skepticism, not just from others but sometimes from within. He wondered, had he known? Inversion for emphasis, auxiliary plus subject plus past participle. How relentless this journey would be. Would he have dared to begin? Shifting his gaze from the bustling streets, Richard's mind drifted to a more serene setting. The tropical island retreat he and Joan often escaped to was a world apart. There, the salubrious breeze, meaning health-giving, swept away worries, leaving only the calm voice of the ocean as their companion. It was on that island where he often found his balance, where business concerns were left on the mainland. Joan, steady and grounded, had always been his anchor. "You know," she would often say, her voice as soothing as the island air, "the sacrifices we make are what build the future." Her words, reassuring yet charged with an implicit understanding of the stakes involved, always reminded him of the strength of their partnership. They shared not only a life but a vision, one that required courage and relentless tenacity. Just as he allowed himself to linger in that memory, the phone rang, pulling him back to the present with a jolt. News had arrived of Virgin's expansion into new markets, a leap forward in their audacious plans. Excitement buzzed through the office, phone calls pinging with congratulations and eager inquiries. This was the momentum he thrived on, the palpable energy of a business in flight. Amidst the flurry of activity, Richard decided to call Simon Draper, his business partner, and a voice of reason amid his often impulsive enthusiasm. Simon answered on the first ring, his tone measured and thoughtful. "This is a significant step, Richard," Simon said, his cautious optimism a familiar counterbalance to Richard's fervor. "But we must tread carefully. Expansion can be as perilous as it is promising." "I know, Simon," Richard replied, his voice carrying the weight of someone who lived for these moments. "But isn't it worth it? Every risk, every sleepless night, it all builds towards something lasting." "The ephemeral, meaning short-lived, nature of these triumphs," Simon mused, "is what keeps us on our toes." Aware of the fleeting nature of success, Richard nodded, even though Simon couldn't see him. Triumphs, he understood, were transient, but the legacy they were crafting was not. Each decision, each bold step, was a brick in the fortress they were building, a testament to vision and perseverance. Richard hung up, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. He looked out again at the city, a sprawling testament to human ambition. The streets below teemed with life, each person with their own story, their own challenges. He thought of Joan, of Simon, of the people who had joined him on this journey. Their sacrifices, their shared dreams and occasional doubts, all were threads in the tapestry of what Virgin was becoming. His mind raced with possibilities, the future as unpredictable as it was promising. In the quiet of his office, Richard allowed himself a moment of reflection. The path ahead was fraught with the unknown, yet it was this uncertainty that fueled him. The thought of what might be if only they dared to dream a little bigger, to push a little harder, lingered in his mind. And so, with the city still bustling outside his window and new horizons beckoning, he found himself ready, once again, to embrace the unknown and chart a course for tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to the English Frequency Podcast. We're glad to be part of your English learning journey, from beginner to advanced. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, share, and leave a review. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and see you in the next episode.